Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I do want to address something that was said earlier, effectively accusing Republicans of being a bunch of right-wing nut jobs just because we have some problems with the drug mifepristone. Mifepristone is a pill that kills babies, so I don't think it's crazy that we are against that, first of all. It is not a crazy position to take. And it should also be said that we're asking the FDA to follow their own risk evaluation processes for a post-approval process, especially when we see adverse health effects in women that take mifepristone, the pill that kills babies. That doesn't make us crazy. Let's go to some questions here. Again, appreciate y'all being here. One thing I'm extremely interested in is regenerative medicine, and I think the value that can bring to the public. Top of mind is some of these treatments that quite literally use the patient's own body, their own cells to cure a disease. It's one of the great miracles of our time, using autologous cell therapies. But there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty surrounding that. Dr. Marks, you've talked about an intermediate pathway to approval for novel products that don't neatly fit into the biologic versus cell and tissue pathways. Will you commit to continuing to work with us and the industry on academic innovators to ensure regulatory modernization that works for everyone and gives us that certainty so that we can have that innovation?
Yeah, very much so. We absolutely commit to that.
Okay,
I mean, it's an important area where I think we realize that there are products that are quite nuanced here and that we want to facilitate the innovation getting to patients without essentially at times perhaps what could be seen as undue regulatory burden.
Great to hear. One of the things that's also come to my attention in meeting with, really interesting innovators in all the healthcare spaces is the lack of communication with FDA. They often feel like it's sort of a black hole of communication. They don't know what they're doing wrong. They're just told to do it again, try it differently. Well, differently how? You'll figure it out. I hear that kind of feedback sometimes. So can you discuss how FDA plans to enhance communication and support for sponsors during their review process, particularly for these smaller companies that don't have the legions of lawyers and people to help them with the process?
Yeah, thanks. Again, thanks. Thanks very much for that question. So we recognize that many of the sponsors working in regenerative medicine or even some of the small gene therapy companies, they do not have the experience dealing with FDA, and they need someone to be very able to listen to their concerns and respond. So we have a number of programs. We have a program that people can come in very early on with just a platform approach. It may be not a specific product, but a set of products they're intending to develop, and they can have a very informal meeting with some of my colleagues about manufacturing or clinical development. I know I'll let Dr. Cavazzoni to speak about a similar program in CDER. We also have an early regulatory meeting called an Interact meeting where without having to submit the investigation new drug application, a sponsor can come in with just a couple-page write-up of what they're planning to develop, and we can have a dialogue as well. And it's a no-fault dialogue. We don't hold the sponsor to taking our advice, but it allows them to get feedback. And we will continue to try to interact as much as we can in informal settings appropriately with those trying to develop products in this area.
Okay, Dr. Meyer, I appreciate it. I only have 1 minute left, though, so I want to shift real quick. I'm very interested in the use of psychedelics for treatment of PTSD. We were able to push through some legislation that will tell DOD to fund the clinical trials. FDA has leaned forward on this. I think almost a year ago proposed guidelines for frameworks for what those clinical trials would look like. Can you commit to ensuring that those will be finalized soon? I think by June is the date we're looking for.
You know, we have issued guidance on, for developers on the type of trials and development plans that we expect if they're interested in studying psychedelics as drugs. And as with in all areas, we are very, very open and interested in working with developers. I cannot speak for programs that are currently under review, but obviously there is a lot of interest in the space, and we want to be there to guide developers and give them advice at the right time.
So the guidelines were, we saw a draft review saying the guidelines are finalized at this point? Or?
Yeah, we issued draft guidance. We want to get a little bit more experience from the current programs before issuing final guidance. And we also want to make sure that we review all of the public input that is given, that was provided to us when we issued guidance. So, yeah, we want to be very thoughtful when we issue final guidance.
Okay, understood. But do you have a timeline on that?
I can't give you a timeline today, but we're happy to follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman's time has expired and yields back.